me start that session. Thank you all for being here. Tonight's focus will be on student life centers for identity, inclusion, and empowerment, focus on supporting CSUSM students to thrive on campus. My name is Jay Franklin, Associate Director of New Student Family Programs. With us this evening is my supervisor, Christine Moen, Director of New Student Family Programs, Robert Ayalo Hauser, Director of our LGBTQ Pride Center, Floyd Lai, Director of the Cross Cultural Center, and Alicia McGeever, our interim coordinator of our Women and Gender Equity Center. So some ground rules, definitely please mute yourselves and raise your hand to be acknowledged. To raise your hand, please use the reaction button at the reaction tab at the bottom of the screen. Click on the raise your hand button and then we'll be able to hear you so no one talks over each other. Definitely please show respect to our guest presenters. And I'm gonna hand it off to, I'm looking at the screen, it looks like Robert. Oh, Floyd.
Well, I'll just start only because we're going to get a chance to talk about sort of the individual centers and we want to be responsive to the questions you may be bringing tonight to us. So I don't know, maybe we could also maybe start there and if you're willing and able, if you want to put it in the chat or if you want to unmute, maybe what brought you to tonight's session. I don't know if you've been at other previous ones and so this was the next one in the rotation, or if there were maybe other reasons that brought you here tonight. And you can feel free to unmute, or if you want to just type it in the chat, I'll just give you a few minutes. And I know folks that may be putting stuff in if there's anything at that, or you might have just been curious. Barb, you unmuted, so I'm gonna on you.
Okay, good. I'm a slow typer, but a
You're
fast
good.
talker.
I know. Sometimes it's just easier just to talk it through. So
yeah. So my reason for being here is because my niece moved in with me to start Cal State San Marcos because I live in Carlsbad and it's an easier drive.
Yeah.
She's living here. She's quite content. She's happy. But I want to try to get her more involved in campus activities. And I know that's her responsibility, but if I know what's going on, I can kind of so that's why I'm here tonight.
Well, thank you for
I asked her to join me, but she said she was good. I'm good.
Well, I wish we all had aunts or relatives that would take so much care to at least check this out. So thank you very much for being here tonight. I see from Mariama, if I'm pronouncing Maria. I think.
Why can't I see everybody?
On your iPad, you might have to slide over, and then you might be able to see everyone depending on how your view looks.
Okay, wait, that's better. Now I know. Okay, good.
Who's in the room?
Have to see if I can get them. I'm gonna mute myself now.
Okay, thanks, Barb. Appreciate that. I just want to acknowledge Mariama, just curiosity, which is great. I think it's great that you are curious about what kinds of programs and things are here. And it looks like Christine Delgado, just if you didn't get a chance to read it, has attended past parent webinars and appreciated the opportunity. And their student is in their second year or second semester, excuse me. So in their first year, it sounds like, and doing well, which is great. So that's awesome. I know Jay introduced us briefly, but I wanted to give you a little bit more background about each of us. So again, my name is Floyd Lai. I've been here at Cal State San Marcos since 2011, so actually going into my 13th year, and have been in higher education for almost 25 years, almost, and then which is hard for me to comprehend as I'm saying that out loud. But excited to be in higher education. My degree as an undergrad was actually in environmental engineering, and then I found a different pathway. So, if you have students that are bouncing around different majors, I'm happy to speak to them about some of that. But I was involved on campus, and so that's what led me down into the direction, and then eventually got my master's at USC in post-secondary administration and student affairs. I thought I'd at least let Alicia and Robert, you might know Christiana, I just want to acknowledge her is here as well, but if you haven't as the director, but maybe Alicia and Robert, can you share a little bit about yourselves, and then we'll just jump into the presentation from there.
Yeah, I can go. So like Floyd mentioned, my name's Alicia. I use she, her, hers pronouns, and I've been at Cal State San Marcos since 2019. I started working here initially as a graduate assistant when I was doing my master's program down in San Diego State to get a similar degree as Floyd had. And then when I graduated in 2021, I was presented with an opportunity to become full-time staff. Similar to Floyd, I got involved in student affairs because of my campus involvement. And so I just fell in love with being able to serve students, and every day is a new adventure for sure in student affairs. And I appreciate that. And I've always had a passion for education because my undergrad is actually in sociology and education sciences from UC Irvine, which is also where Floyd went. And that's it. But we also have a lot of alumni from CSUSM here, which I love to get to meet people who have been here for a longer time than me. I'm like the baby of the group, I feel like, but I love getting knowledge from Floyd and Robert. But yeah, I love doing the work that I do, working with students. I've worked at a couple of different campuses, even though my student affairs career is still relatively new, and there's no campus or students like CSUSM. They're special, and I love getting to know them. And yeah, I could gush about my students all day long, but I will now pass it over to Robert.
Thank you, Alicia. So again, my name is Robert, and I use they, he pronouns. And I have been here in a professional role for about 14 years. I am an alum of the university. I received a multi-subject teaching credential and then a master's in multicultural education. So I'm kind of the odd person out. I took the education route and not the student affairs route. But I do think that there's a lot of teaching, educating that goes along with the work that student affairs professionals do. And so I've been passionate about teaching my entire life. And when I was looking at teaching, it really was about helping young people kind of find their way in the world. And I just never imagined it would be college students. I thought it would be 5 or 6 year olds. So I did that for a while, but I truly do love what I do. I love this campus. CSUSM changed my life by coming back to school, and then has opened this door to a career that I think my entire life was preparing me for. And so I really do strive to make each and every student that comes in contact with me give them the ability to have the best experience they can have at CSUSM.
Thanks, Robert, for sharing that. And thank you all for allowing us or giving us the opportunity to share a little bit more about ourselves. I think a lot of what we shared, at least in sharing about ourselves, is integral to kind of the work we do as a collective with our students. So there are 5 centers that we're going to be speaking about tonight, and we'll go in sort of the order that's listed in the slides. But collectively, we're known as the Student Life Centers for Identity, Inclusion, and Empowerment. And really what that means is that we work collaboratively. We leverage a lot of the strengths that we each have and contribute to this collective, this group. And the way it's manifest is in the work that we do. And so we recognize your students are individual, have different backgrounds, come with different varying experiences. But we work collectively because of the fact that we know that they may have different interests and different things that they're learning about. And so this sort of empowering framework is an illustration of how the 5 different centers work collectively together. We have students who come in who may have multiple aspects of their identity they're exploring or want to learn more about, or just want to kind of, be as part of their education or as part of their social networks. And so you can kind of see, sometimes we'll work with the Black Student Center, or sometimes I'll work with the Women and Gender Equity Center, or collectively. And so we have a lot of opportunities to work together in programming and in supporting one another. And so we hope that our students feel very comfortable going from center to center. There's not necessarily there may be one that they feel very comfortable in, and Robert knows this firsthand, but just that they feel comfortable being able to go to each of the different spaces, which are available for all students to utilize as much as possible. This is our sort of collective mission that we wanted to start with first. We each have our own unique approach or perspective in how we look at this collective mission, but essentially the Student Life Centers are committed to celebrating, educating, and creating the spaces for students to find a sense of belonging. We want them to feel like that San Marcos is a place where they can find the connections that they need, the support that they need. And that's through developing self-awareness. So a lot of times we'll do programs or activities that kind of explore themselves a little bit more, exploring intersections of identity, because we know they're not just one singular aspect of who they are, but they're complex individuals, right? And engaging in educational, social, and community programming. And that's what we do a lot of, is a lot of the programming on campus that hopefully engages your student in trying to learn more about themselves and the rest of the community that they're part of. Here is our sort of as a collective kind of what we do. We do have some programs today. For example, we had our social justice symposium, which was a 2-day event, and that's something we do collectively as a large group. There's also our Cougars in Solidarity block party, which is something that we do at the beginning of the year to welcome students and also introduce them to our centers and spaces. And so this is just a little bit about how we work collectively together. These are the different spaces, as I mentioned, the 5 different spaces. And so some of our collective goals are to develop their, just how to work with people that might be different from themselves, right? So developing that cultural competency or awareness, helping them to understand what the campus climate might be like in ways that they can be proactive leaders, perhaps in changing or shaping that in some way. In my area, particularly as a cross-cultural center, it's our focus is on identity exploration and expression, and that's all aspects of their identity, whatever that may necessarily look like. It's very focused on that intersectional approach, and we're really committed to trying to build, as I said earlier, empowered students who feel like they can create and be leaders of tomorrow and be able to do change or do whatever it is that they're necessarily interested in doing. So with that, I wanted to turn time over to Robert and talk a little bit more specifically about how the LGBTQA Pride Center approaches it, or what their focus is as it relates to this collective.
All right, thank you, Floyd. So you see all the alphabet letters, as I said, alphabet soup, but it really is, our space is really the Pride Center, and it's a prideful space that is really supportive of all sexual orientations and gender identities. And so really all students are welcome, and we do see all students. I do want to mention that the A in the space, although for asexual, it also is for ally. An ally is anyone who's supportive of the community. And so we do see our straight identified folks that have friends that may be a part of the community, and students want to learn more about them. How can I support my friend? They just came out to me. I'm nervous. I don't know how to support them. And they also see how fun we are and all the great things that we do and the great community that we build. It really is about helping students feel like they belong. You're going to hear that word a lot. Feel like they have a family, feel like they have connections, feel like they have friends, because the reality of, I am an educator, as I said earlier, and I do teach. The reality of what students are going to learn while they're in college, 60% of that is going to be outside of the classroom. And it's giving them the ability to take what they're learning in the classroom and use it in a safe environment. And I like to say safe, inclusive environment where we allow students to be brave and practice those things that they're learning. Learn from folks that are different than them. I tell students all the time, you never know who your new supervisor is going to be, or if you're running your own company, that $1 million client that's going to walk in the door, how they might identify. And you want to be able to understand and present the best you to that person without offending them, without saying something with that not even knowing could cause you to lose that account. And so it's important, as Floyd said, with all 5 centers, we really talk not only from our student employee perspective, but students that hang out in our spaces that become a part of our community, to be connected with the other communities and learn from them and set the example for other students within the space. And so we do a lot of programming, both just for the space and then for the entire campus. We just this past weekend had our Second Chance Prom, which is one of our larger events. We had over 200 folks there. And it really was set up to allow folks to have a prom experience that I think most people go through. It's almost a rite of passage. And some folks were not able to have that, whether even now with COVID, high school students didn't have prom. We have folks that couldn't go because it was expensive, couldn't bring the person that they wanted to, because some schools say you have to be a student. Well, what's the guarantee that your partner, the person you're seeing, is that goes to your school? They may go to a competing high school. And so we want to give students the opportunity, no matter what, to attend, have a great time, dance the night away. And so that's something. And then we also do education about all the identities that come to the space, helping people both learn about themselves and then, as I said, others. Um, yeah, I think I'll, if anybody has any questions now or as we kind of go through, I work with a lot of groups of students. And so folks kind of see the letters, the Pride Center, the space, but kind of like prom, we get students from all backgrounds, from all the spaces, even students that don't even venture into our spaces. I work with Greek life. I work with housing. I work with the orientation team leaders that help your students get acquainted with students. It's for me, it's about being that face that can help even the shyest of students find a way to get connected. I think people think, oh, it's the Pride Center, everyone's going to be all happy, and they are loud, but I think they get to that place. We do have shy people that come in and kind of find themselves and begin to build that self-confidence that they're really going to need when they go out into the world. And so I think that that's a huge benefit that our spaces provide for young people in kind of that safe, supportive environment. We're not, they're going to go out into the world and there's not a safety net. We are that safety net now to really help them when they stumble and fall, that you have a community, you have staff that are here to help you, to pick you up and to help you learn from those mistakes so that you won't make them when you go out into the real world.
Thanks, Robert. We were talking earlier before you all kind of joined in. Robert is really reaches out specifically to introverts in particular. So if your student has introverted tendencies, Robert is a good person to connect with because they get it and they're able to connect with them and find ways to get them connected and involved on campus. So thanks, Robert. Our next center we just wanted to highlight and maybe make sure I can click on there is our Latinx Center. And I would say this is probably our second newest. So what I mean by that is they've been around probably a little over 5 or 6 years now, I believe. And their focus is really, we are a Hispanic serving institution in HSI. And so we have a large proportion of our students who identify as Latinx. And so a big part of the focus of the center is really to develop familismo or sort of principles of a family, right? And they operate through a Latinx critical theoretical lens. So they focus on the empowerment piece that we talked about earlier by affirming and validating through imagery, through literature, through art, right? Through what they see. They can see themselves on campus and they can see a space or a center that affirms who they are as an individual and helps to validate their experience while they're there. And many of our students, if you weren't aware, are first generation, first in their families to go to college. And so it's great to be able to feel like you have a place to belong again. And so the hope and the goal of the Latinx Center is really about, fostering that transformational change through those experiences and to help them in being successful as students so that they can do well. Because when you feel like you belong or feel that you're accepted, then you can focus on academics and other things. And you're not worried about some of those things that may affect you socially or emotionally. Just sort of a quick tangent. I came home and I have 2 girls, one's 14 and one is 12. And they were talking with my wife and it would seem like a serious conversation. And as I was listening to it, it was them feeling like that they didn't necessarily belong with certain friendship groups, right? So it was so connected to kind of the work that I do. And so it was a great opportunity for me to hear them out and see what their experience is and how maybe to, as a parent, try to suggest ways they can develop some relationships and hopefully feel like they're part of certain groups or choose not to, right? And there's plenty of other groups that they can be a part of as well. All right. And all of these spaces are in our university student union. Let me just back up as well. That's our sort of centralized kind of, they call it the heartbeat of the campus in some ways. That's where food services is located, but we're on the 3rd floor of the east wing there's 2 wings in the union. And majority of us are on the 3rd floor of that particular wing of the building. The Black Student Center, which we'll get to last, is on the 4th floor as well. So let me go next to my colleague, Alicia, to talk a little bit about the Women and Gender Equity Center.
Yeah, thank you, Floyd. So like I've mentioned before, I have the privilege to work in the Women and Gender Equity Center. We primarily serve 3 populations: women, trans and non-binary students, and parenting students. But just like my colleagues were mentioning, everybody is welcomed into our space. We do a lot of programming similar to like what Robert was mentioning that kind of hit those three key identities, but we also do a lot of community building programs. This past year, once we were transitioning from remote learning, it's important to do those educational opportunities, but we also, I think all my colleagues can agree, wanted time for students to just be able to connect. And so some of our programs that are a little less maybe intimidating to folks bring in a new variety of people. We do a lot of things around arts and crafts, and also a lot of my students spend that as a time for maybe people to do like some healing and connect with like student health and counseling. Some of our major events are actually starting next week will be Women's History Month. And so we do a Women's Leadership Symposium, which again is open to all individuals, but it's a free conference for students to attend and learn from community members, whether within CSUSM or in the North County, San Diego region, and just hear about their stories as women leaders, and then those who maybe identify are able to see like representation there, but also those who are outside the community have an opportunity to learn and support our women on campus and outside. Another event that's very popular is our Love Your Body Day, which is actually what this image is from. And so every fall we have a big runway out in like a Forum Plaza, which is a place where a lot of the students congregate during our university hour, which is where we do a lot of our events. And they get to go across the runway. They usually get to pick their song. And it's just a very heartwarming event. And that one really brings out a lot of different identities. We do try to be as inclusive as possible because we know everybody can use that support. Within our own space, we're typically a little bit quieter in our centers, but I think that brings a lot of people who utilize us for studying, study groups. We have a computer lab. We also offer a couple of free products that's all students are able to come and grab. And then if your child or anyone you're like connected to is a parent, they're able to actually use our lactation room. So a private space for those that need to utilize that space is very popular. And we do try to do programming also to support student parents and build community there. Besides the resources that I already mentioned, we do a lot of collaborations with student health and counseling because they have a sexual assault advocate. And so that's something that we find very important because it affects all of our communities, but particularly our center. And so we definitely lean on the experts, but we try to definitely be a safe space and a pipeline to connect those who may be experiencing those things. That's a very, very broad overview of the Women and Gender Equity Center. But something that I really love about our space is, and all of our spaces, is they're truly student led. And a lot of our spaces are founded also from student activism. And so I think every year is a little bit different, which, like I mentioned earlier, makes things exciting. But I think what our students are producing are really what hopefully the students that you are connected to want to see. And we're always looking for feedback. And I really love like our student employee program, but also a lot of us work with volunteers. And that's another great opportunity if maybe your student is feeling a little nervous and doesn't know how to get involved. We have there's service learning, which is sometimes connected to their coursework. And I know my center, along with the Pride Center and a couple other spaces, people are able to learn about our resources, but also get to know each other. And that's kind of when I think I've seen some of like my proudest moments as we get some students that maybe we don't typically see in programs. They're just kind of checking things out, or maybe they picked us because we were just on campus, but they really learn about like feminism, what it means to be involved in social justice, and just be an advocate for other individuals. So that's a brief overview of our center. But then, yeah, just reiterating again, like our space is open for everybody.
Thanks, Alicia. And I it's always interesting in these Zoom boxes, but the backgrounds that we each have are kind of you can kind of see our spaces if you're wondering what they sort of look like. They may be slightly different. Furniture may be moved around in different places, but hopefully that gives you a little bit of a feel what the space looks like. And if your student happens to come by, and you all obviously are welcome if you were ever on campus, come by and visit as well. Let me talk briefly about the cross-cultural centers. So it has the distinction of being the first established space on campus way back when in 2003. We're excited because we're actually celebrating our 20th anniversary here on Cal State San Marcos's campus, which is a big feat because the campus itself is not very old compared to compared to state or other places. But So that's sort of the distinctive thing about our center and space. The other thing that I'll encourage and share is what I shared earlier about the focus and emphasis on identity exploration and expression. We want students, when they come into our spaces, not to have to feel like they have to put up pretenses, but they don't have to explain who they are. They can just be, right? And so that's a big part of the programming that we do in all of our spaces. But because we as a cross-cultural center don't necessarily have one particular group that we may be working with, we focus a lot on student leadership. So we do programs around advocacy and activism. We hope that, you know, everyone has a passion for different things, and there are different ways in which we can advocate for change. Some of them are more public, you know, protests and things that serves a purpose in some instances. And then in other ways, there's lots of ways to do it. And so we do programming to help them to better understand how as a leader they can create social change. We do a lot of programs around cultural competency or cultural intelligence. Again, how do we work with people different from ourselves and do it successfully, and be able to interact with them, right? And then we have, you know, different programs about that exploration. We also try to connect our students with faculty in informal sort of ways. So we invite faculty to come in sort of an intimate situation to talk about how they got here to Cal State San Marcos. What was their journey? They were undergraduates at one point. They were graduate students. They, you know, went on into academia, but what was their pathway? And a lot of times that helps to lower any sort of barriers that students may have or any apprehension about who that person or faculty member is, and really develop a relationship. And, you know, for those that may be continuing on into getting advanced degrees, those, you know, professors' recommendations, letters of recommendations are so critical and important. So that's our way of kind of making sure and establishing those relationships between students and the faculty that teach, as well as grad students, right? Just giving them a broad picture of what the university can provide for them. As I mentioned earlier, a lot of them are first generation college students. So we really want them to be as successful as they can be academically. And as Robert mentioned, we do a lot of, I think what's exciting, our work is co-curricular. You may have heard of extracurricular back in high school, or, you know, there was extra on top of the academics. We have a very strong belief within our area that what we do is integral to what they're learning in the classroom, right? They can apply it in the real, quote unquote, real world outside of the classroom. And then hopefully the experiences they're getting, the conversations they're having in our spaces, those will enrich the discussions they have when they go back into the classroom. So it's very co-curricular in that way. I have one more center that we'll talk about, and this is probably our newest center, which is the Black Student Center. And their mission really is about promoting the academic, cultural, social, and political consciousness of students of color, right? And we recognize that for this particular community, they have a lot of different ways in which having a space like this really supports their well-being and helping them to be successful on our campus. Again, all of our spaces are open to students, so if they want to learn more about the Black experience or those types of things, students are welcome to go into that space. But the focus of Black Student Center is really on trying to engage the institution, Cal State San Marcos, in helping them to increase retention and make sure that they feel like they belong so they can continue to graduate, make sure they're participating and that they're staying within the university through retention programs, and then improving their graduation rates. And so Chanel Watkins, who is the coordinator for that program, is unable to join us tonight. And so she wanted to highlight two particular things. So they have what's called the Ujamaa Achievement Program. And what that is a very specialized program where as a cohort, they get to learn more about ways they can support themselves academically. So that's one program she wanted me to speak to. And the other one is the Healing Circle. And what that is a collaboration with our student health and counseling services. Alicia mentioned, you know, coming out of, well, and even Robert, coming out of COVID, there's been a lot of transition, and we know that mental health is definitely a concern for a lot of students. But this program that they have, the Healing Circle, is really a way to promote the well-being and wellness of our Black students and making sure that they feel connected and they're able to talk about you know, mental health and other things holistically, in a very holistic way, excuse me, and try to support them in that way. So those are two programs that come out of our Black Student Center. Here are just a couple of images, and some of these are probably dated from the last time that we've updated them, but here's some visual stories of just ways and programs and events you can see up in the top corner, top left is folks from, it looks like the Pride Center, maybe, I can't tell, my glasses on. So, but just a lot of programs, lots of ways to get connected together as, you know, as students, as individuals, and just making and fostering those connections that oftentimes will serve them well beyond the time here at Cal State San Marcos. I won't go into too much detail. These are some narratives of students that have described what it's been like, either being connected to or working in our spaces. You know, a lot of them have learned that, you know, despite our differences, we're all the same. And so recognizing that there are some similarities and things that connect us and unite us in ways, but also not necessarily taking away from the uniqueness and the differences that we have. I think the other one I'll highlight is, you know, the centers have allowed me to further explore my identity because it's a brave space and a community that supported me personally and academically. You may have heard the term safe space, and that's often used a lot in higher education. We like to sort of, and this is actually coming from Robert and the Women and Gender Equity Center, this notion of a brave space. How do we not only make it feel safe, but also maybe choose to be proactively engaged in the community and be a part of it in a way, right? It's not necessarily reactive, but they're proactively being a part of what it is that they may be interested in doing. All right. That is our brief presentation. We probably glossed over a lot of things. Again, I'm not sure if there were certain things that you were looking for tonight in our presentation, but I know that Alicia, Robert, and myself were happy to answer any questions that may have come up during the course of our presentation. If they don't come tonight, that's fine. We tell our students, you know, maybe you get this epiphany a couple days later. You can follow us on social media. So we do all have social media presence on Instagram. Robert, you've got a TikTok, I think, right? Yes. There's so your students will find us. Yeah. If they want to. We also have websites as well. So you're welcome to go to the Cal State San Marcos website and look us up if you want to learn more about some of the different programs that we put on. Are there any questions that come to mind or anything we can help you to respond to or answer as we've presented to you tonight? And I'm going to stop. I've done a lot of talking, so I'm going to let my colleagues respond to those questions if they should come up.
Thank you all for doing your presentations. I really appreciate that. What I want to do is acknowledge that this is being recorded. So I want to stop the recording so we can ask questions freely. Let's stop that.